Please take a few minutes to listen to this PowerPoint presentation and work through it. It's not too long, and it will really help you to get more out of your reading and help you better understand the material for the class as you prepare for your exams. Every book has structure to it. Textbooks are pretty open about the structure they have. They use chapters, sections, and subsections to organize, in this case, historical information. By being aware of that organization and the other tools the textbook offers, you can better understand United States history and improve your grade in this class. I would encourage you to open up your textbook, log in if you haven't yet done that, and the study guide from Canvas, and be able to practice the things that this PowerPoint is going to teach. So every week through the semester for 7 weeks, you'll have 2 chapters to study per week. In the first unit, you'll be tested over those 2 chapters. In every other odd unit, so Unit 1, Unit 3, Unit 5, and Unit 7, you'll be tested over 4 chapters. You'll read 2 chapters for the test in Unit 3. You'll read 2 chapters in Unit 2 and 2 chapters in Unit 3, and then test at the end of that week. The chapters are set up in such a way to guide you towards better understanding of the content, and of course the exams are set up to follow that guidance as the questions are developed. So each chapter, if you'll follow the cues that the book gives you, then you'll be better prepared for the exam. Each chapter will also have a reading quiz associated with it. The reading quizzes really are more like reading guides. The reading quizzes are various numbers of questions, but you have 60 minutes to do them. They're all multiple choice. Here's a sample question from chapter 17. As the line of white settlement moved westward, travelers emerging from the Missouri timber country encountered A, the Sierra Nevada mountains, B, the Great Plains, C, the Rocky Mountains, D, the Western Plateau. And if you go into your book, you can find in section 17.1, emerging from the timber country, travelers first encountered the Great Plains. So the questions are really closely tied to the material in the book, and they're pretty straightforward about what they expect you to know. The chapters are organized in a pretty similar way for each one. They all begin with an introduction. And the introductions usually will start with a story that demonstrates the important points of the chapter. So this text box is the story from the introduction in chapter 17. And it talks about Indian people going west so that they could be impressed by all the power of the United States. And while they were there, people who believed that they had the Native Americans' best interest in mind tried to convince them to adopt the values and the culture of Anglo-Americans. And that's going to be one of the themes in the chapter. So the introduction is meant to catch your attention and prepare you for the content that will be described in the chapter. There's also a summary that identifies important themes in the chapter. You can see this example from chapter 17 is something like a thesis that's going to describe the whole content of the chapter in some fairly specific ways. Each chapter will have a similar sort of summary. And then you'll notice at the bottom of the first page of each chapter, there's a contents and focus questions. These are going to lay out the different sections of each chapter. So by looking at those carefully and thinking about them before you read, you'll have a good idea of where the chapter is going. And I'll go ahead and tell you that the questions on the test are oriented around the questions that you'll see in the chapter. We'll talk about sections and subsections now. And we'll be looking at chapter 17 in particular. As a general rule, you'll want to use the Canvas quizzes to guide your reading. Again, the questions are pretty closely tied to the text. And so as you work through those questions, it'll give you an opportunity to read more carefully and more intentionally. The essay questions are probably going to be something that you do as you prepare for the exam. And it's going to be a more careful reading, a different kind of reading. And it focuses on the structure and outline of the textbook. So please pay attention to these ideas, and you'll be able to complete the study guides very efficiently and learn more out of the process. So the first question on the first study guide for your first test is this. Consider Indian removal. What was life like for Plains Indians before removal? How and why did U.S. Indian policy change from the 1950s to the 1970s? How did tribal life change in the last 2 decades of the 19th century? Now, if you approach that as a set of random questions that you have to answer out of a great big textbook, then it can be kind of intimidating. But the textbook provides a lot of tools to help you to answer those questions well, and of course the questions have been designed to take advantage of those tools. So I want you to notice, if you have your textbook pulled up on another window you can look at, I want you to notice that the section titles correspond to the essay questions. So if you'll go back with me to 17.2, removing the Indians, you'll notice that the first question, the first statement in the question is consider Indian removal. So when you see that on the question, you can go to your textbook and find the section that corresponds to that. The question asks about Indian removal, and you have a section title called Removing the Indians. Now the next question is, what was life like for the Plains Indians before removal? If you turn over as you're reading your textbook and you look at number 17.2.1, you'll see that the heading there is Life of the Plains Indians. And the quick check that corresponds with that is what characterized the life of the Plains Indians. And that corresponds very nicely with the question. What was life like for the Plains Indians before removal? The quick check helps you to think through that problem, through that question. And section 17.2.1 is directs you to the material that you'll need to answer the question. The quick check for 17.2.2 is how did American policy toward Indians evolve in these years? And that corresponds with the second question in the prompt. And then sometimes we'll skip a section if there are too many sections for us to have a nice clean essay. We may have skipped a section, and that's okay. You're just going to want to look for the quick check that corresponds to the question that's in the prompt. So in this case, for example, we skip 17.2.3. The quick check doesn't correspond to the third question in the prompt. But if you go on to 17.2.4, you'll notice that the quick check does correspond. What events and measures ended tribal life? And how did tribal life change in the last 2 decades of the century? So again, if you'll just follow the cues of the textbook and correlate them with the prompts that you have on the study guide, I think that you'll find studying to be much easier and reading to be much more fruitful. Now, any essay question is going to require evidence to support the claims that you're going to make. So as you read, please try to pay attention for specific evidence, specific facts that you could use to argue your point in the essay. Terms like ghost dance, movements, or people groups like the Sioux, individuals like George Custer. You could include laws, new inventions, new movements. Anything that's specific to the time can be counted as evidence towards proving the thesis. I know it can be intimidating to have a whole book to read through and to find these answers. You may feel like you're on your own, but we've tried to make it where there are processes and tools in place to support you. I would recommend that you, again, work through the reading the first time with the quiz open. Deal with the questions in the quiz as you go through the reading. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to access the study guide, which will help you to focus on the particular content that can be used on the test. Not all of the subsections will be turned into essay questions, just one per chapter. So in your first reading, do your reading quiz while you're working on the reading, and then afterwards you'll have access to the study guide, and then you can work on that. There's another PowerPoint on the study guide, so be sure and check it out if you're having trouble with that.